Hello and happy Wednesday. Today is a short little solo episode, short and sweet. We are talking about wedding timelines and more specifically, which factors affect your timeline the most. I really hope this episode helps you just get like a grasp on how your day will flow depending on what your specific wedding day looks like. So let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to the Busy Bride Podcast. I'm your host, Gabriella Marie, and I created this podcast to help you research vendors and learn valuable advice as you plan the most special and true to you wedding day of your dreams. Let's get started.
Okay, wedding timelines. First of all, I want to go over what a wedding timeline is, because if you're not in the wedding world, you may not know that your wedding day has a literal timeline that things will abide by. So I, as a wedding photographer, help create a custom wedding timeline for each of my couples for their wedding day. But if you have a coordinator or planner, they will also do this, and all of the timelines that you have will meet and will converge and will like make sense together. They should not be conflicting in any way. But the photography timeline is important because the photographers are there doing photos that you want, like photographing moments that you want captured before all of the like big events are happening, if that makes sense. So say if you want photos with your mom helping you put your wedding dress on. That happens before the ceremony, so that's not really on any other logistical timeline for the day, but the photographer has it on their timeline because that's an important moment. We don't want to miss that. And so that's part of the day. So timeline, it's essentially a plan for the day. It's an organized list of moments to capture during the day and when they're happening, when they should be happening, so that no moment goes missed, like no moment goes uncaptured. It is just to make sure everything is covered, all your bases are covered. So that's what a timeline is essentially. And there are factors that happen on wedding days or that are part of wedding days that will affect your timeline, and that's why every single wedding timeline looks different from each other. There are factors like where you get married, and the time of year you get married, and things like that. There's also really specific factors during the day that impact it. So let's get into the 6 major factors that will have an impact on your wedding timeline. So the first factor is whether or not you do a first look. This impacts when we do the bulk of formal portraits on your wedding day. So a first look is amazing because obviously you get to see your person before you get married and be like, oh my gosh, hello, we're getting married today. What in the world? And also, it provides extra portraits for you. It's a beautiful moment. It eases nerves before the ceremony, but it also allows the photographer to get done a bunch of like stand still and smile pictures before the ceremony starts, which allows you to enjoy your cocktail hour later in the day. So, for example, if you do a first look, that means you and your partner are able to be in pictures together for the rest of the day. So, you get ready in the morning, get your dress on, you get those pictures, and then you and your partner have your first look, and it's such a sweet moment. You have happy tears, all the things. And then we go off and do some couples portraits for like 30 minutes, sometimes like 45 minutes. And that's just like time to get nice quality portraits of you two on your wedding day. After that, coming back, we can do wedding party pictures. So this is all the formal pictures with your wedding party. It's the full wedding party together, standing smiling, the full wedding party doing something fun, and then if it's like separate wedding parties, like bridesmaids all together, groomsmen all together, and then individual wedding party members with the couple who's getting married, like whose side they're on, if that makes sense. So it's a lot of like stand and smile pictures. I make them as fun as possible, but it is a lot of pictures to be taken. So that's the wedding party pictures. So you get couples portraits done, wedding party pictures done, and Most of the time, like 99% of the time, immediate family members are going to be with you for the getting ready portion. And so they're there before the ceremony, and it makes sense to get immediate family photos done before the ceremony. So this is pictures with your parents, with your siblings, and then a mix of all of those things. Um, both parents, both siblings, both families, all that jazz. That can get done before the ceremony. So already before all the guests arrive, like before things kind of start to get a little crazy. And by crazy, I just mean like there's a lot of things happening. Um, Before that happens, you've already gotten a ton of like your checkbox photos out of the way. If you don't do a first look, we can still get those pictures done. However, we'll need to get a lot of them done during cocktail hour. So, since you are not able to see each other before the ceremony, the only formal portraits we can do out of that whole entire list that I just read off is the individual like sides of the wedding party, and then also the individual pictures with family. So you wouldn't be together with your partner for these family pictures; it would just be like you and your family. Um, so that means after you get married, we'll do family photos together. And this can also include some extended family that'll be in the audience if that's what you want. Some couples do, some couples don't, but this can be like grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, things like that. And then the full wedding party pictures all together, and then couples portraits because you won't be able to get any of these earlier in the day. So this takes up a good chunk of cocktail hour. If it's a 60-minute cocktail hour, it usually takes up the vast majority of cocktail hour, if not the whole thing. If you do a 90-minute cocktail hour, there's usually time afterwards to like chill and eat and drink and mingle with your guests. So that's the first factor. It's a really heavy one. The first look is definitely the major factor in your wedding timeline just because there's all the formal pictures take a while, and so when we do them impacts what happens the rest of the day. So that's that first big factor. The second factor that affects your wedding timeline is a formal exit versus a faux exit or a fake exit. So if you're doing a formal exit at the end of your reception, like a sparkler exit or a bubble exit, something where you and your partner are just like running off and your guests are cheering you on and you go into the car and you go away. That is a formal exit at the end of the night. That means your photographer will stay the whole entire reception so that they can capture that moment at the very end. Faux exits or fake exits happen at some point earlier in the day. So this can even be something where, like after the ceremony, people will do bubbles or throw like flower petals or something as you recess back down the aisle, or it's a sparkler exit or bubble exit or something like that that happens during the reception earlier on. Oftentimes, this happens like after cake cutting before the dancing starts. So in this case, you would bring your wedding party out and your immediate family out to do this exit before the dance floor really gets started. This is a way to do the exit earlier in case you are going to an after party and you feel weird like having a big send off if you're just going to see everybody later on anyway. Or if you know that there are a good amount of people at your wedding who might leave early for one reason or another, if they're driving in or if they have kids, anything like that, then they can be included in this exit if you do it earlier with the like fake exit. Or if your photographer is set to leave earlier than the end of the reception and you don't want to add on time at the end, then you can do this fake exit earlier and they can capture it and you can still get those sparkler exit photos that you wanted. So basically, exit, the formal exit versus the fake exit, determines if your photographer will stay through the end of the reception. The third factor that impacts your wedding timeline is hair and makeup. This happens at the start of your day, and it sets the tone for the rest of the timeline. I recommend scheduling hair and makeup to end like half an hour before you actually want it to end because this allows time for touch ups, and also just in case things run late, which can happen, especially with a larger bridal party. And everything goes to plan, then you have extra time to chill with your people before getting dressed if hair and makeup ends early. So that's totally cool too. Um, this I The reason I suggest adding the extra time, like that buffer zone, is because when it does run late, then everything that happens before the ceremony, like between getting ready and the ceremony, will feel a little squished down. If we need to like fit things in before the ceremony starts, if hair and makeup runs late. So this is something to just be proactive about and schedule in an extra half an hour just to allow things to happen there. Okay, fourth factor is day of travel. So, traveling on your wedding day is really common. Some people will have the entire wedding day at a reception venue, which is awesome. And other people don't for one reason or other. Sometimes they get married at a church. Other times their reception venue just doesn't allow them to be there super early before the wedding, so have to get ready elsewhere. Other times you want to get married on a mountaintop and then celebrate in a barn like 10 minutes down the road, like whatever it is. If there's travel involved in a wedding day, it's a huge factor, and it definitely needs to be given a lot more leeway in the timeline than you think so. Because it's not just the time it takes to drive from one place to another, it's the getting everything together and packed and loaded into the vehicle, getting every person loaded into the vehicle, making sure you plan time for like people who need to go to the bathroom last minute, or if you want to grab some extra beers to the party bus last minute, and then unloading everything from the vehicle. If it's like a shuttle or a party bus or something that's doing like multiple trips, so say it's taking like the bride and all the bridesmaids somewhere and then it's going back to get the groomsmen, definitely allow extra time for that, just in case people are running behind schedule, which happens often on wedding days just because there's so many things going on and there's so many people involved. So just make sure that with the day of travel, you are planning in extra time for traveling. And then for the fifth factor, is a little tangent from the last one, kind of, and the first one. Anyway, okay, the fifth factor is wedding party size and family size. So, I mean, obviously, if you have a bigger wedding party and a bigger family, we will be taking more pictures, yes, but this is mostly for the time it takes to wrangle people, to get them from place to place, to let them know that they will be in pictures. It just adds a few minutes here, a few minutes there, all adds up. So, if your wedding party is larger and your family is larger, or if you want to include a bigger extended family in your pictures, just allow for more time for that to happen because, wedding days are happy days. We don't want anybody to feel rushed or feel unhappy that they are needed for a picture immediately and they must stop drinking their cocktail. So just this is definitely something to allow time for if you have that bigger wedding party, bigger family. Now, on the flip side, if you have a small wedding party or no wedding party at all, if you have a smaller family, you only really want immediate family pictures, this means that there's probably more time in the timeline to do something like bride and groom portraits or couples portraits or detailed pictures. So there's flexibility both ways. Just make sure that if you have more people involved in the wedding day, then there's just more time allowed for pictures of those people. And then the last factor is also really major, and it's the time of year when you get married. More specifically, when the sun sets. So if your wedding is in like the winter daylight savings time months, I don't know if that's like if it is daylight savings or it's not like I don't know. I don't know, but you know what I mean. In the winter, when the sun sets early, this affects a lot of your day, especially for portraits, because if it's light outside, that means we can take pictures outside, and if it's not light outside, that means we must take pictures inside with flash, which is like totally fine. It's just a different look, and it's also typically, unless your wedding venue is like massive and has these giant halls, harder to get a bunch of people together for formal pictures in an indoor space. Also, not only for people to line up, but for the photographer to back up enough to have space to photograph everybody. So, if your wedding is in the winter or the winter months like November, March, something like that, when the sun sets earlier, if you have any control over your ceremony time, I would suggest doing your ceremony earlier. Doesn't really need to be like a brunch wedding or a brunch ceremony, although those do happen and are kind of awesome. Um, it just means that if you want to do portraits in the sunshine or outside at all, then there needs to be time before the sun sets at like, I don't know, 5, 4:30, something like that. And I think the biggest factor that ties into this is a first look. If you do a first look in winter, that means you get a ton of the formal portraits and couples portraits out of the way before the ceremony, which will most likely be before sunset. And if you don't do a first look, that means that you'll be doing the all of the photos, like the formal photos, probably closer to sunset time. So just make sure if you're planning a wedding that time of year that you have time when the sun is out to do at least some pictures during the day, some formal pictures. It would just save a lot of like hassle of getting people together in closed indoor spaces and also gives the photographer much more leeway and room and space to get these formal pictures done. So those are the 6 big factors that affect the photography timeline, and I just also wanted to put a disclaimer that, like, none of these are, like, good or bad things, they're just things, and they have an impact on the timeline. So, with all of this, I'm not saying you should do this or you shouldn't do that, it's just make sure you plan for this, make sure you plan for that, just so that your wedding timeline feels like very flowy and feels very natural and does not feel like rigid, and also does not make you feel stressed because that is absolutely the opposite of what timeline should make you feel. Timelines are they're suggestion, they're not these rigid things that like must be adhered to with no exceptions. They're just simply how I make sure that everything that you, the couple, wants to happen actually happens, and in a way that feels like things are just like seamlessly flowing from one thing to the next, because the goal for you, the couple, to feel fully present on your wedding day, soaking in every moment, and a solid timeline allows that to happen while still getting all the photos you want captured. So hope that'll make sense. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope this helped. If this did help and you think this will help somebody else, share it with a friend, share it to your Instagram story. I would love that so much. And if you do that, please tag me at Gabrielle Mariotti. And yeah, I'm thankful for your time. So go hug your person, and I'll see you next Wednesday.